Welcome to my channel. I'm going to be discussing about the Valentine's Mars-Venus conjunction that's happening in Sagittarius in sidereal astrology and how this is all tying into Venus and Mars' son that they had, who is Cupid, Eros, and how he ended up falling in love with Psyche and what happened to her and all the mythology around that. And also Vulcan, who is all tied into this because that is Venus's husband. Venus-Mars conjunctions, they happen once every 2 years, but the fact that it's happening right on Valentine's Day, and Venus rules Taurus and Libra, but on the cardinal cross, this would be the male axis, and Libra has to do with balance. It has to do with the scales of justice, right? And this is very important with what's going on right now in the world. And then the crown chakra is Aries, and that would be the I am, the Lamb of God, and that is also on the male axis of the cardinal cross. Okay, so that it's really significant because it's love and intense war passion. Okay, it can be passion. It can be the warrior within you. Okay, to do with justice. Okay, so this is really intense energies that are happening right now, and actually it's really good because it's bringing in the whole Psyche with Cupid. Psyche and Cupid fell in love, and your Psyche is related to this story. So the fact it's all happening on Valentine's Day is really exciting. And then we have the Super Bowl actually tonight, and I have a preview commercials and also preview from the entertainment for the halftime show. I want to go through a little decode of that as well because they're showing us the Titans, the 5 planets. So that's really significant as well. So it's really tied, there's a lot tied into this weekend, and it's exciting because I do feel like it's at a pinnacle point of, kind of people showing their love for the justice of this world. So here's the Venus, Mars. It's actually Vesta's really close by there too, the Vestal Virgins. And we also have Pluto very close to Mercury. And this is all happening in Sagittarius. Different to what tropical will tell you. Tropical will tell you, I believe, that it's in Capricorn at this point. But for me, I follow the sky. That's what I do. I follow the literal sky and the energies of what's happening through these energy vortexes of the planets. Sandro Botticelli did a really nice painting of Venus and Mars with Cupid. And he also did the famous painting of Venus's birth. Now I want to go into this painting a little bit in the symbolism. In this picture, Zephyrus and his wife, most likely Iris, because she ends up being the goddess of flowers, and they have flowers all around, and they're blowing wind on Venus and bringing her to the shore while she's inside this scallop shell, right? That's the symbolism of Venus, is always in the shell. That's her birth. And the west wind, Zephyrus, blew her to the shore. And then the hooray, or the hours, also known, they were receiving her and they dressed her. So she's almost like a pearl inside the clam. Zephyrus also fell in love with the nymph Chloris. I've mentioned this before. Chloris actually comes to meaning pale green for chlorophyll, whose devotion he won after vying for her affection with Boreas. He's the north wind. Following this, he abducted and married her, and upon their wedding, she became the goddess of flowers, known as Flora, in the Roman tradition. And they also had a son named Carpus, whose name meant fruit. So there's the flowers and the fruit. Now he's also tied to Ariadne, and Ariadne wears the corona crown, right? She's the one that, gets out of the labyrinth. She's the keeper of the labyrinth, but then, her hero got in there with a red piece of wool that she was holding and was able to kill the bull and get out of the labyrinth, which is the constellation Taurus. So the west wind was said to have multiple different wives, in several stories. He was married to Iris, goddess of the rainbow and messenger for the gods. Rainbow means ascension. As a messenger, Iris was responsible for bearing prayers to her husband. She was also the one to whom Ariadne prays in the 47th book of Nonus. Now, 47, that's a really esoterical number. And then after being abandoned on the island of Naxos, in her prayer, Ariadne admonishes Zephyrus in front of his wife, angry at the west wind for assisting Theseus in his abandonment of her. Yeah, Theseus was her hero that got the bull killed, and then he abandoned her on an island. So she didn't like it that the west wind helped. So if Zephyrus torments me, tell Iris, the bride of Zephyrus, the mother of Pophis, to behold Ariadne maltreated. So he can, not be nice, I guess, at times, but he's usually a soft wind. Now, David Bowie's album that ties to Omicron was named Hours, after the hooray. So they're Greek minor goddesses of the seasons of other divisions of time. Yeah, so it could be the two timelines and attendants of Venus. So yeah, so they looked after her and dressed her. But it's interesting because his album, all tying into Omicron in his video game was called Hours, and then, he's into the Black Star, which is all to do with Venus. So everything's about Venus, basically. It's like she's it. She's the harvest queen. She decides which way you go, in a way, and if you have love in your heart, if you don't. And this is what it's all about. You got to have love, and you got to fight for justice, because she rules the justice constellation, Libra. The Venus symbolism is everywhere. There's the artist Aurora, Exist for Love, and she does this kind of throwback to the 1950s, and, she's just standing there inside the Venus shell. This Italian performer just got reprimanded by the Pope, and he was pouring water on himself like a baptism, but he's also doing it out of a Venus shell. Like a bowl that's like the Venus shell. So I'm starting to see that this water that comes out of Venus's shell is the nectar. It's also the nectar for being born again or becoming immortal. Now here they're explaining that she's also known as Aphrodite, right? Venus is Aphrodite, Roman equivalent is Venus. So she's, the goddess of love, pleasure, beauty. She rules Taurus, which is the possession house, second house, and the relationship house, the seventh house of Libra. The most prevalent myth about her origins is that she was born on the coast of Cyprus. From there, the wind Zephyrus, with a gentle gust, pushed her to the sea, into the white crest waves. Aphrodite was greeted by the seasons, the Oris, and dressed and adorned her. They're also like the hooray, or the hours. They're the seasons, right? The time, the division of time. They dressed and adorned her. She was inlaid floral dresses from purple, so this is where the color purple comes from, silk, and other shiny fabrics. They plaited her rich braided hair and pinned them with beautiful golden buckles. They adorned her glowing white neck with precious necklaces, emeralds and rubies. Finally, they wore pearl earrings to her ears. Then they transferred Aphrodite to Olympus and presented her to Zeus and the other gods. Everyone admired her, were dazzled by her beauty, told her countless compliments, and wanted to make her their wife. There is another version of how she was born. Aphrodite was born from the members, the testicles of Uranus, which is the heaven planet, after his amputation by Cronus, that's Saturn. So Saturn chopped off Uranus's testicles. The sea kept for very long the celestial members inside her infinite body. Foam formed around them, and through the foam, the gorgeous Aphrodite emerged. Zephyrus traveled her upon the huge seashell for a long time in the immense ocean. During this journey, the strange ship of Aphrodite passed through Cythera and then went to Cyprus. So it was a ship. So that ship was a shell, and yeah, and she was born from testicles floating in the ocean, creating foam. I guess that's where the word seaman comes from. Seamen, seaman. So if you're on a ship and you're called a seaman, it's really seaman. It's really crazy. The other story is she's the daughter of Zeus and Dion. And she was an Oceid. Okay, so there was also too many myths showing the gorgeous goddess having always the weapons for seductive beauty and her irresistible sensual desire. Initially, we met her fighting the giants alongside the Olympiads. With her incomparable charms, Aphrodite lured 15 giants into a cave where Hercules was hidden. Hercules was exterminating them one by one with great ease. Aphrodite was, with her sweet cravings, could conquer all the gods and mortals, but also the beasts of the land and the sea. She exercised great power in her entire universe. Her greatest amusement was to seize the gods with erotic lust for mortal women and goddesses for mortal men. Once her purpose was fulfilled, she started mocking the Olympians, who accepted to mate with lesser beings. The only ones that could not fool over at Olympus were the goddesses of eternal virginity, Athena, Artemis, and Hestia. So they didn't fall for it, right? So Aphrodite's largest victim was Zeus, whom she often threw into the arms of one of the other mortals, thus causing the uncontrollable hatred to Hera, which was his wife. So there you go. She just caused a lot of havoc by putting love and lust on people, well, mainly Zeus, and that's why he had so many affairs, supposedly. And Zeus is the planet Jupiter. Aphrodite was also a sea goddess that is stated in the myths about her birth. So she's to do with the sea, right? So that's the second stage of alchemy, which is to do with water, the white goddess. The symbols associated with her are white doves. They dragged her chariot. Symbols were apples, poppies, rose, myrtle, anemone, and the flower of the pomegranate. Her father, Jupiter and Diana. Brothers, Apollo, Mercury, Mars, Vulcan, and Bacchus, which is Dionysus. Her husband was Vulcan, and we have to get into that because he didn't particularly like her having an affair with Mars. And she also had all these other lovers. Besides Mars, she had Mercury, Anchises, and Adonis. Her children, Cupid, Hermaphroditus, and Aeneas. But when she's Aphrodite, and not just Venus, these are all her other children. Now, the second stage of alchemy, yes, is the white goddess. It's also ties to Neptune, Poseidon. So she had children with Poseidon as well. She had a son with Anchises called Aeneas, and he is considered the ancestor of Remus and Romulus, founders of Rome. Rome was named after Romulus. And on February 15th was the celebration of that because of Lupernalia Day, which is the wolf that nursed Remus and Romulus in a cave. There's a few famous paintings of Venus and Mars being surprised by Vulcan. He's up in the top there with his fire, thunder in his hand, and he is the god of forging, right? So he's a forger, metal worker, blacksmith. And the story is that, he caught them in bed. He actually made a trick on them, and then he put a net over them. And he had all the other Olympians watching this happen, and he caught them in this metal net. So there's lots of paintings, other paintings besides this one, of the same event. So here they're talking about the lovers getting caught with Vulcan, and then this other thing ties into the poem of William Shakespeare was published called Venus and Adonis, published in 1593. The Venus and Mars netted story is also significantly mentioned in the English poet John Dryden's All for Love, or The World Well Lost. So the one is with Adonis. I guess the Shakespeare poem is with Adonis, and then this other poem is tying to Venus and Mars. All for Love was written in 1677, and it's actually tying into Cleopatra and Antony. Now, this all ties into Caesar, and like they were in battle with their ships, so it all goes back to the ships. But what happened was Antony then tries and fails to commit suicide because he was told that Cleopatra had killed herself. But Cleopatra then comes in and sees Antony still living, but on the verge of death. Antony dies, then Cleopatra then kills herself, as do her ladies in waiting, all by the billing of snakes. So yeah, so she gets bit by snakes and gets killed that way. So I did a whole bunch of research on this whole thing with Cleopatra and Antony, and yeah, this story is very symbolic, and the way that they arranged all the ships, and it was all done with deceit, and it was like it's a big drama. But in the end, they both die, right? So is that all tying into Mars and Venus, like this the tragedy of this love, really? And is this tying to Mars and Venus, or is this tying to, again, Adonis and Venus? Because Adonis ends up dying, but it's never in the story that Mars ends up dying. Mars turns himself into a boar that Adonis wants to go hunt, and then Mars turns himself into the boar, and then he ends up killing Adonis. So there's this love triangle thing going on. Hephaestus is also the Roman counterpart to Vulcan in Greek mythology. So Hephaestus was either the son of Zeus and Hera, or he was Hera's parthenogenous child, which means there was no sperm to create the child. He was cast off Mount Olympus by his mother Hera because of his lameness, the result of a congenital impairment, or in another account by Zeus for protecting Hera from his advances, in which case his lameness would have been the result of the fall rather than the reason for it. As a smithing god, Hephaestus made all his weapons of the gods of Olympus. He served as the blacksmith of the gods and was worshipped in manufacturing and the industry centers of Greece, particularly Athens. The cult of Hephaestus was based in Limus. Hephaestus' symbol is a smith hammer, an anvil, and a pair of tongs. So the synopsis here is that he also created armor and weapons for the gods. He also created Zeus's lightning bolts. He was a happy child because he was, I think, a nymph ended up looking after him, and he played with dolphins and pearls, and he found a fisherman's fire on a beach and became fascinated with it, and he put it in a shell and brought it back, and he ended up staring at this fire all the time. He was fascinated with the fire. Vulcan carefully shut the piece of coal in a clamshell, took it back to his underwater grotto. So he lived under the water, but he was fascinated with fire. Okay, so it's always to do with the water, right? Under the water. It's almost like Atlantis. And then Juno was furious and demanded Vulcan to return home when she found out that he, made things. So he made this chair for Juno, his mother, who threw him away, also known as Hera. And he made a chair that entrapped her, and he pretended it was nice and gave it to her as a gift. And so Juno, he would give him a wife. So Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, was given to Vulcan, agreed, and married Venus. So Vulcan later built a smithy under Mount Etna on the island of Sicily. So Mount Etna, when it erupts, ties to Pluto and also to Vulcan. So Vulcan grew angry. Yeah, he got angry and angrier, and then, Venus ended up cheating on him. So, yeah. And then it says here, to punish mankind for stealing the secrets of fire, Jupiter, Zeus, ordered the other gods to make a poison gift for man. Vulcan's contribution to the beautiful and foolish Pandora was to mold her from clay and to give her form. He also made the thrones of the other gods at Mount Olympus. So, there you have it. So, Hepatus is in the sky on Valentine's Day, on Monday, right beside Perseus's head that he's holding, which is Medusa, with the algal star in it. That's the demon star. And he's right at the bottom of Perseus's foot, right below the head. And then Ceres, who's on the apotheosis of Washington in the Capitol building painting, she's kind of the same as Venus. She's like the harvest queen. And she's right by the Pleiades in Taurus. So, it's kind of, there's a lot, it's very symbolic. It's kind of intense there. Now, this was in the book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, on page 99. So this is all tying into Vulcan. So certain Rosicrucian scholars have given special appellations to these three phases of the sun. The spiritual sun, they call Vulcan, so it's the spirit. The solar and intellectual sun. The Christ of Lucifer, respectively. And the material sun, the Jewish demiurgus Jehovah. Lucifer here represents the intellectual mind without the illumination of the spiritual mind. Therefore, it is a false light. The false light is finally overcome and redeemed by the true light, the soul, called the second logos of Christ. The secret process by which the Luciferian intellect is transmuted into the Christly intellect constitutes of one of the great secrets of alchemy, and are symbolized by the process of transmuting base metals into gold. So see, there's a huge transformation that has to happen from Lucifer to Christ. And that's why they're both called the morning star, right? But it's a transformation of the false light to overcome and redoing the true light of the soul. So, yeah, but it ties into Vulcan. So he's the spiritual sun. So the spirit is really the fire within. And then that's when you have to kind of, transmute that with the intellect. So the spirit and the intellect has to come together, which is really the intuitive mind and the logical mind, the two sides of your brain. I found this is really interesting. It's Lapsit Exilith. This is the stone that fell from heaven. The Ordo Latus Exilis is named after the stone that fell from heaven, the fabled jewel that is said to have fallen from Lucifer's crown during the war in heaven, and which the occult is used as a symbol of enlightenment, of the descent of the divine light from the mind of God into the mind of man. As such, it symbolizes Venus, the morning star, as well as the Luciferian doctrines of the initiates, the secret knowledge which men are not allowed, and with Lucifer's angels were cast from heaven for sharing with man. So Lucifer tried to share this knowledge with man, and then he got cast from heaven. In Freemasonry, this is symbolized as the blazing star. Remember I told you guys about the blazing star in my last video, which is often depicted as falling from heaven. As Albert Pike writes in the Morals and Dogma, the blazing star has been regarded as the emblem of omniscience, or the all-seeing eye, which is to the ancients was the sun. Okay, so the all-seeing eye is tied to the blazing star. Now, the blazing star is, I do believe, when Lucifer, like Venus is in her Lucifer state, right? When she's behind, like dragging behind the sun. Okay, and maybe when she gets with the sun and catches up to the sun, that's the all-seeing eye. So that would be happening on October 25th this year. So Masons are also represent the lapis exilis as a stone that was rejected, the secret cornerstone of Solomon's temple, which symbolizes the core of their teachings. For us, the lapis exilis is also the cornerstone, for it is the solid rock upon which our ideals stand and upon which we have built our work. For us, the stone that fell from heaven provides the foundation of our fraternity, and it's certainly a jewel most valued. The stone that fell to earth was an emerald that adorned Lucifer's forehead. It was cut into the shape of a bowl by the faithful angel, and thus the grail was born. So it's the grail. Can you guys believe this? This is the freaking grail. It was given to Adam before he was expelled from the Garden of Eden. Seth, Adam's son, having temporarily returned to the earthly paradise, took the grail along with him. Other people transported the grail to the Monastir, a fortress in the Pyrenees, which Lucifer's armies besieged in order to get the grail back and put it into the leader's crown, out of which it had fallen. But the grail was allegedly saved by knights who hid it within a mountain. Now, this is all tying to the Buddhist religion. So, can you guys believe this? I had no idea. This is freaking amazing. Vulcanelia Day is also in August. It's August 21st. So that's interesting because that's when, a few days before, and they also got the 25th here, yeah. So that's exactly when Venus goes into the superior in conjunction and ends up turning into the black star, right? She goes over top of the sun, is right at that time this year. So, and they're saying it all ties into July 19th and 21st for Lucania on July 19th, 21st, and Neptunalia Day on the 23rd. And then we also have Fernalia on the 25th. This is all in August. August is really loaded. While the festivals of July dealt with the untamed nature, the woods, and water, superficial waters, the Neptunalia and the underground waters of Fertinalia. And at the time of danger caused by these relative deficiencies, those of August were devoted to the results of human endeavor on nature with the storing of harvested grain, and their relationship to the human society and regality, which at the time were a risk and required protection from the dangers of excessive strength of the two elements, fire, Vulcanelia, and wind, Volturnalia, reinforced by dryness. So it's all these mythologies and all these festivals are all relating to alchemy in a way, because alchemy is the elements. Really, it's the opposites, right? It's like it's always this relationship between Earth providing for us and humanity, and we're just a mirror of her. And then, of course, the sky is a mirror as well. So it's really fascinating how it all ties together. This is just explaining how he got told by Helios, told him about the affair Venus was having with Mars, and then he created this trap for her and Mars. And then the other thing was about her with Adonis, right? So even though he was mortal and therefore beneath her divine dignity. According to the myth, Adonis was killed by the jealous Mars, who had turned into a boar. Venus was so heartbroken after the death of her lover that she used the blood of her tears to create a flower, the red pheasant eye. So they're calling it the red pheasant eye now. That's like also to do with ascension. Venus also had an affair and children with Bacchus, so Dionysus, the Roman Dionysus, and Mercury, Hermes. Boy, she got around. Both sons of her adopted father, Jupiter. Thanks to another man, Venus obtained a special status for the Roman people, where she dated Anchius. Yeah, and they end up talking about how she has the son with Anchius, like I said before, but then she ends up being he's related to Caesar, so she ends up being the great grandmother of Rome. But the cool part is Cupid and Venus, right? So she has Cupid. He's also known as Eros, so that's his other name. Eros and Aphrodite are called Latin Cupid and Venus. Okay, so it's her child, and the story tells the quest for love between Eros and Psyche. Aphrodite was jealous of the beauty of the mortal princess Psyche, as men were leaving her altars barren to worship the mere human woman instead. And so she commanded her son Eos, or Cupid, the god of love, to cause Psyche to fall in love with the ugliest creature on earth. But instead, Eos falls in love with Psyche himself and spirits her way to his home. Their fragile peace is ruined by visits from Psyche's jealous sisters, who cause Psyche to betray the trust in her husband. So wounded, Eros leaves his wife, and Psyche wanders the earth looking for her lost love. Eventually, she approaches Aphrodite and asks for her help, and Aphrodite imposes a series of difficult tasks for Psyche, and she is able to achieve the means as a supernatural assistance. Okay, so after successfully completing these tasks, Aphrodite, Venus, relents and Psyche becomes immortal to live alongside her husband Eros, Cupid. Together they had a daughter, voluptas, or hedon, meaning physical pleasure and bliss. So it turns into bliss. So eventually their son, Cupid, ends up creating a mortal to get to the other side. So in Greek mythology, Psyche was the deification of a human soul. She's portrayed in ancient mosaics as a goddess with butterfly wings because Psyche was also the ancient Greek word for butterfly. Wow, that's amazing. The Greek word Psyche literally means soul, spirit, breath, life, or animating force. So it's our breath, right? So we're being masked, our breath is being clogged. So this is all tying into what's happening right now. In the Gnostics narrative found in On the Origins of the World, Eros, during the universal creation, is scattered among the creatures of chaos, existing between the midpoint of light and darkness, as well as the angels and people. Later, Psyche pours her blood upon him, causing the first rose to sprout up on the earth, followed by every flower and herb. So this is really symbolic. It's really our psyche, our soul, right? And it's kind of our soul get to the other side, and we have to go through all these tasks, and then feel the pain of losing our love, and then the love is brought back to you because of Venus allows you to go there. That's what it's all about. She's the one that decides. She's kind of like Isis in Egyptian mythology. She weighs your heart by a feather. It's one of my favorite. Psyche revived by Cupid's kiss. This statue with his wings on. Yeah, beautiful. It's a beautiful story, but that's what Valentine's Day is about. That's the good side. I know there's lots of history of bad stuff and people getting murdered and, dying with Socrates and Captain Cook and everything, but this is the good side, and it's all about our soul, right? Everything is about our soul. So here we have Cupid, as well as there's 3 Venuses. The first Cupid was the son of Mercury and Diana. The second of Mercury and the second Venus, and the third of Mars and the third Venus. How confusing is that? The last Cupid was the equivalent to Antares, counter love, the one of the Erotes, the gods who embody aspects of love. In later classical tradition, Cupid is the most often regarded as the son of Venus and Mars, whose love affair presented an allegory of love and war. The duality between the primordial and the sexually conceived Eros commentated psychological concepts of heavenly and earthly love, even in the Christian era. Cupid is winged, allegedly because lovers are flighty and likely to change their minds. Oh, I never knew that. The boyish, because love is irrational. His symbols are the arrows and torch. So the torch, like on the Statue of Liberty. Because love wounds and inflames the heart. These attributes are their interpretation, were established by late antiquity as summonized by Isidore de Seville. So Cupid is also sometimes depicted blindfolded and described as blind, not so much in the senses of sightless, but in the sight of the beloved can be a spur to love, as blinketed and arbitrary. So as depicted by Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. So Midsummer Night's Dream is all tied into this as well. So love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid, painted blind. Wow, what a story. But there you go. It's all about us. So, yeah, here it's saying again, obstacles of love between Psyche's soul or breath of life and Cupid, and their ultimate union of marriage. And then one of her tasks, the goddess then sends Psyche on a series of quests. Each time she disappears, of each time she is given a divine aid. On her final task, she is retrieved a dose of Proserpine, which is Persephone's beauty, from the underworld. She succeeds, but on the way back can't resist opening the box in hope of benefiting from it herself. Whatever she falls into, I can't see this, the writing's so small, a torpid sleep. Cupid finds her in the state and retrieves her by returning the sleep into the box. Cupid grants her immortality so the couple can be wed as equals. It has also played a role in popular culture as an example of true love, and commonly used in a relation to the holiday Valentine's Day, better known as the Beauty and the Beast. So even the story of the Beauty and the Beast is all based on Cupid and Psyche. So here we have Cupido is an asteroid, and it's in the Lion's Gate on Valentine's Day with the moon on the gateway of man, the beehive cluster, the manger of Christ, and on the back of Cancer, which is the only constellation ruled by the moon. And Psyche is there, and she's in Leo, so the sun. So Cupid is in the Lion's Gate, and then, or Cupido is in the Lion's Gate, and then she's in also on the Lion Leo. There's also an Eros asteroid, and that is really cool. On Valentine's Day, it's just going into Pisces, but then as the month proceeds, it gets right in that pentagon on the right-hand fish, which is called the circlet of Pisces, and I am sure that is the manger, not the manger, the crown of Christ. Okay, I'm sure that's what it is. because esoterically, Neptune is the Christ consciousness, and Neptune rules Pisces. And the right-hand fish is the spiritual fish. The left one is more institutional spirituality. And so on February 22nd, look at all the twos, okay? It's like two, 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 all across, and there you go. It's right on his crown. So that's Cupid, right? That's all to do with love, is on the Christ's crown in Neptune's Pisces. It's like, wow, on the tail of the whale, or on the back of Pegasus, on the back of the horse. Adonis is in conjunction with the moon in Libra, the scales of justice, also on February 22nd. Now, I've mentioned this before, that the fish of Pisces were originally dolphins. And this ties to Poseidon, Neptune, Apollo, the sun, which, you know, is kind of like Vulcan, and Dionysus, which is the wine, the nectar of the gods. He wants you to drink the wine. And there's ancient artwork and mosaics with Cupid riding the dolphin. So William Shakespeare's writing on Venus and Adonis is acted out here. It was kind of cool. He ends up, you know, rejecting her, and then he ends up kissing her, and then she ends up killing him in the end in this depiction. But in the other stories, he is killed by Mars, the boar. Lots of drama around this. So Ares, who is Mars, the god of war, was furious, being of a boorish disposition, because he liked war. He changed himself into a boar and killed Adonis in the hunting accident. This resulted in the much hair pulling and scattering and shrieking in Olympus. So Zeus decided it was time for a bit of peace. He declared that Adonis was not totally dead, but could spend 6 months of each of them. So now Aphrodite enjoys his company in the spring and summer. They frolic, they dance and snuggle. Basically, they do all the kinds of things fertility deities get such a naughty reputation for. And then in the fall, he goes down to the underworld for the long winter vacation. So that's interesting. So this also was in the Game of Thrones, right? Remember, the king was killed by a boar, and his wife's name was Ceres. So Ceres is, like I explained, is right beside the Pleiades. So that was all in the Game of Thrones. I was watching some of the best Super Bowl commercials, and this was funny, that they're fishing, and he ends up getting a pearl out of the Venus clamshell or scallop shell. And his friend he's fishing with is all into gaming, and he ends up pulling up a whole bunch of pearls in his. And then it's kind of funny because he is always going on about gaming, and the next thing you know, there's a real monster coming out of the lake. And then you look over back at him, and he's got 2 lobsters. So this is really representing Scorpio, and that is your house of transformation, the 8th house. And then he's back in his living room saying, wow, that was a really weird fishing game in his metaverse reality, because that's the 2 things. You either transform and you become the pearl, or you have fear and then you're stuck in the metaverse. Now, Venus and Mars was a Paul McCartney and Wings song, and it's interesting that he's got the yellow and red, which are the 2 colors of the last stage of alchemy. Well, white and red, and then also yellow. It's tying into here with astrology. So they're saying, why did you come up with this song? And he says it's about an imaginary friend who's got a girlfriend who's the kind of person who asks what your sign is before they say hello. That's it. A good friend of mine studies the stars. In fact, in the first verse, it's a good friend of mine follows the stars, so it could be ambiguous, a groupie, or an astrologer, they're saying. So here are the lyrics. Sitting in the stands of a sports arena, it reminded me of the Super Bowl, waiting for the show to begin. Red lights, green lights, strawberry wine. A good friend of mine follows the stars. Venus and Mars are all right tonight. What's the man holding in his hand? He looks a lot like a guy I knew way back when. It's Silly Willy with that Philly band. Could it be? Tell me, what's the man moving across the stage? It looks like he's got one used by Jimmy Page. Is it a guitar? It's like a relic from a different age. And then if there's a rock show at the concert G Bowl, they have got long hair at the Madison Square. You've got a rock and roll at the Hollywood Bowl. So the Sophie Stadium, like Sophie, right? It's kind of like the Sophia. But this place was built from the Hollywood Park racetrack. So it could be like the Hollywood Bowl in a way. And it's in Inglewood, California, the Super Bowl. But the rest of the lyrics are weird. The lights go down, they're back in town. Okay, behind the stacks you glimpse an axe. The tension mounts, you score an ounce. The temperatures rise, you see the whites of their eyes. They've got rock and roll at the Hollywood Bowl. In my green metal suit, I'm preparing to shoot up the city, and the ring at the end of my nose makes me look rather pretty. So that's like a bull ring. It's pretty, it's pity there's nobody here to witness the end, save for my dear old friend and confidant, Mademoiselle Kitty. What's the man moving to and fro? The decibel meter doesn't seem to be reading low, but they was louder at the rainbow. So anyhow, it's just kind of weird. I just thought maybe it was tied to the Super Bowl. And the word ingle means boy favorite, academite. Now, academite is almost like a boy sex slave. Well, it is, but it also has this other meaning. So ingle is a fireplace from the Scottish, usually said to be from the Gaelic, fire and light. It was generally a term of affection and literally means Ganymede. Okay, so Ganymede is Aquarius. He is the boy that brings the nectar of the gods to Zeus. And I guess eventually he decides to pour it all out, and he pours it out onto the world, right? So there's this, they turn it into this whole like, oh, it's just a male, young boy prostitutions or whatever, but there's always an esoteric, deeper meaning to it. And so the Academite, Ingle, basically means Ganymede, which is Aquarius. And this is where they're going to be having the 2028 Olympics, which looks like an angel. So it's in Los Angeles, like the Lost Angels, and it's tied to Aquarius, the stadium, the name of where it is. Somebody sent me this, and they were looking at the Katy Perry Swish Swish with Nicki Minaj, and the stadium's name was Bingo Ball Bond. So it's like, these are all esoteric words, and they're playing the sheep against the tigers. And we're in the year of the tiger. So the halftime show is showing like the 5 titans, and Mary is like Venus, the Virgin Mary. So it's Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar. 43 Grammys between them all, and 22 #1 Billboard albums. So 22 is very esoteric, which is really the Fool card. It's the 22 pass, it's the 22 Hebrew letters, it's the 22 tarot cards. So they're calling themselves the Titan in this NFL tweet. They're saying, watch these 5 music titans, get ready for the Pepsi halftime show. So they are using the chessboard in the symbolism. They're showing it like the chessboard is actually a city. Then they show Eminem, and he's fighting himself with words to his other shadow, like his light and shadow side. Then they're bouncing words that says "shoot for the moon," which we don't want to do. And then he burns. He kind of, disintegrates and burns, or he disappears. So that would be the other path. So I see Eminem as like fighting himself, like it's like, and it's also ascension there. So I'm assuming this would be Mars for the I am crown chakra. Ruler is the warrior within you. Yeah, so it's the I am, which is the Ram, right? And they're in the Ram Stadium. I told my mate that the Rams were going to win. Kendrick Lamar, I see him as Mercury because he's got this barcode on him and he's just thinking. He's in the thinking mode, and that's Mercury. He thinks. And also, he's writing his thoughts down, and Mercury's communication. And these thoughts are floating up into the sky, which has a tendency to be representing mutable cross, because cardinal and fixed cross doesn't have Mercury. Mutable cross only has double Mercury, so I think it's like a trap to kind of re-loop you back. So you float up to the sky, float in the wind. Dr. Dre, I see him as Jupiter and Neptune ruling Pisces, and Neptune is always with water and music, and he's walking on the beach there. And of course, Mary J. Blige is Venus, right? And she's got the Mary and Pearls necklace. Then Snoop Dogg, I see him as like Saturn, Saturn, because he ends up turning around and doing a loop, and he's in his car, and it's a black car, and the car is the chariot, and the opposite of Capricorn on the cardinal cross is the moon, which happens to be the chariot card. So that's, so he's doing a circle, he's doing a ring, and he's jumping up and down in his car too, so it's kind of like, jumping in and out of time. He's the god of the golden age. Now, I've shown this before to you guys, but I have another bit of knowledge here that I just found. So the cycle of Venus, right, the inferior conjunctions when she goes retrograde is the little small 9 days at the bottom of the left-hand wheel here, circle. And then she goes 263 days, and she ends up being the morning star after the retrograde. And then, because she goes around like counterclockwise on this wheel. And then she goes and becomes into the superior conjunction, and she hides behind the sun for 50 days. And then again, she comes out for 263 days, and she's the evening star. So what's interesting is this graph is showing the different phases of her birth and resurrection, and also the days of the Lord. So I tried to figure out the days just by the, this slice of pie on this wheel. And I calculated, I know it's 9 and 50 is accurate, and we know we have 263 in the yellows on either side. So right after she does her inferior conjunction, which happened on January 9th, she would be traveling in resurrection right now. Okay, and then after resurrection, she would be going into the phase of fullness, and then around, that's 210 days, it brings you to this little small phase called the Lord. Okay, so I was like, okay, I wonder when that's going to be through the calendar year. So I checked it out on the calendar duration. So 210 days or 11 days after January 9th brings it to August 8th. So we get the 88, back to the number 88 again, which is the orbit of Mercury. And 88 is all related to Trump, right? And so I'm just like, okay, August 8th, and that all ties into his text number. So he also mentioned this at the Super Bowl. This is the first time he ever tweeted this out, was on the February 2nd, 2020 Super Bowl, which is all 2-2-2-2, 4 twos, right? So I promise to restore hope in America. That includes the least among us. Together, let's keep America great. Text Trump to 88022 if you liked our Super Bowl ad, because he did this ad on the Super Bowl. So that ties the Super Bowl into this date again. So August 8th. And this is all really esoteric to how the Triangle of Washington was all built to the August 13th, mid-August. Okay, so they built, when I was listening to this Freemason video explaining how they built Washington, that's what they were saying. It was all lined to the sky in around August 13th. Now, so I went and checked to see if I could find something on August 13th that's going to be happening in the sky in Virgo. And there you have it, Psyche. August 13th is right on Zabi Javistar. So that's significant because that's all to do with our soul. And it's all tying into this Venus-Mars conjunction that's happening this Valentine's Day, which I do believe is like, it's like the second phase of alchemy. It's the albedo, right? So it's, and then we have this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction happening on April 12th, sorry, and that's huge because we're bringing Neptune into it. So we're kind of in the second phase of alchemy right now. And as the year goes on, we'll get closer and closer towards this midsummer, towards the fall. We're going to be getting into the last stage of alchemy, how it's all playing out in the sky, and how Venus ends up turning into the evening star and she becomes bright again in the night sky, and how we have this eclipse happening, which is going towards the 50 days that Venus gets close to the sun. I think it starts like end of September, and then it gets, you know, she gets closer and closer to October 25th, which ends up being, you know, she's totally, you can't see her in the sky because she's so close to the sun. And then she becomes, yeah, the evening star again. So this August 25th eclipse, and then we have 9 days later, we have the blood moon, which is in conjunction Aries with Uranus in the crown chakra of Aries, I am. So we've got a lot going on, so it's pretty intense. So we just have to watch and see how it all plays out in this timeline that we're living. But anyhow, I just wanted to bring that all to your attention because I think it's a very special Valentine's Day, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you're with the people that you love. And I appreciate you guys a lot for sending me stuff and staying in communication with me. It's kind of, it's getting like I was really high off this whole freedom thing, but now we're getting a bit of pushback here with Trudeau, and you know, we're not sure how it's all going to unravel. There's a vote that's happening in the House of Commons tomorrow, all about the mandates, and been trying to, you know, email my MP just so we can get rid of these intense mandates that we're living under in Quebec here, where it's been rough. It's been a rough, like, over 2 years, you know, pushing on to 3 years now. It's getting a little bit ridiculous to live like this. But anyhow, it is part of the script, and just watching it all unfold and seeing how this is all going to unfold in Ottawa as well. It's all very interesting. So popcorn ready. It's getting exciting. So take care, guys. If anybody needs a reading, or you just want to have a consultation, or if you just want to learn some techniques of what to do with your body to help prepare for all this, I have the Ascension Guide. There's lots of nice tips in there on how to, different practices you can use for your body. Yeah, and so we worked on the website. We're going to work on it a bit more this week. We had a glitch setting it up, so hopefully that's going to get resolved. And yeah, so hang in there, guys, and we're getting into some nitty-gritty. Take care. Bless you all.